Welcome, everybody, to the Purpose Podcast hosted by Now Lemonade. We just rebranded. If you have any other questions on that, go ahead and go to our links below where we always leave them. Check it out. But today we have a special episode for you. I've known Doug for a little bit. We've worked through business and stuff, but we're going to have him on the podcast today, and he's going to share a lot of his story. Just a little introduction for Doug, and he can expand a little bit. But Doug is the owner of SOJO Construction.
Yep.
They do concrete. They do everything in your home, from tearing things down to rebuilding it up. So if you're ever in the space to flip a home, or just to build a new home, or you need stuff done for construction or concrete, this is the man to go to. Does really great work. And then he's also a board member and one of the co-founders of Raise the Tide. Does he say Raise the Tide Co. or just Raise the Tide Group?
I don't know. Raise the Tide nonprofit. Yeah.
Raise the Tide nonprofit. It's a nonprofit organization set to help really anyone, but it's mainly specifically meant for Polynesian entrepreneurs and business owners to be able to connect with other Polynesian business owners and to be able to gain exposure for all people to just to showcase their work. And so we've been a part of that as far as setting up booths and just filming things for Raise the Tide, and it's a great thing that they're doing. It's helped a lot of people. I've heard firsthand experience from that. So we're excited to have Doug on the show today, and we're gonna dive right into it. So there's a little introduction of Doug, but is there anything else that you would add to that?
No, just first of all, excited to be here. Honored to be here with you, Soli. You've been a good friend in the short time that I've known you, and just willing to give back, whether it's at Raise the Tide, showing up, setting up a booth, or filming things for us. And so I think really the intro, I'm kind of a private person. And so originally coming on, I was a little hesitant. If you follow me on Instagram, like I share like more personal things, but really when it comes to Raise the Tide events, people don't know what I do. A lot of people know what other board members do, and they like true. Highlight and they teach the workshops and stuff. But I've kind of kept my business and the things a little bit separate because I've never wanted it to be maybe misconstrued that I started this nonprofit to somehow benefit personally. Really the whole intent of Raise the Tide was to give back to our people and to find ways to help our community, raise the tide in their careers, in their businesses, in their way of life, and in their financial life. And so that's kind of why I've kind of taken a step back with maybe, highlighting the things that I'm doing in my life. And so appreciate the opportunity to be here and maybe to share my story.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And Raise the Tide's done that for sure. I mean, we just had what's his name? Favai.
Yeah.
On the last event. And that's cool. If you guys don't know who that is, we'll drop some information on him down below. But he was actually featured on Raise the Tide's content and such. So just real quick, how did you get connected to him?
Yeah, so he was a good friend of Fred Frost. Frost is a good friend of ours, and he was actually one of the speakers at our first event. And so kind of through a mixture of like, hey, this is an awesome organization. Fred hit up Fa'avai, and Fa'avai was just featured in Nordstrom. And so on social media within the Polynesian community, it was kind of a big deal to have a Polynesian, clothing line within Nordstrom. And so he hit him up and was like, hey, there's this organization. I think it would be great to align and great to have you there. And then he said yes. He texted me. I texted Fa'avai. I was like, dude, we can get you out here. We'll fly you out here to come and speak. And man, he just crushed it. His message was just awesome. And just comes from a different background, and it's just cool to see Polynesians just crushing it in different industries that, maybe we don't know about or don't hear about. And so some people knew him, but I think when you heard his story of what he's doing in the restaurant industry, the NFT industry, in clothing and branding, man, he's an impressive guy, and it was cool to hear his story.
Many talents. I didn't even know he did restaurants.
Yeah.
And then stuff until he started talking. And then I looked up some stuff after, and I was like, Wow. I was like, man, that's a lot. You
Yeah,
got your
and
hands in a lot of
this dude
stuff.
has been invited to the White House. Like, I mean, he's a big
I
deal.
didn't
He
even know
sits on
that.
the board of the National Pacific Islander Chamber of Commerce.
I remember that.
And so it's just, man, it's cool to bring in those types of people
Yeah.
and to highlight them and to show everyone, Polynesians, non-Polynesians, that really whatever you want to do in life, you can do it. Like, put your head down, get to work, and there's endless possibilities out there.
Yeah. Well, I like that. And I think that's going to lead very well into our first question. But let's talk about your roots.
Yeah.
Where you come from, how you were raised, where you're, I mean, your living situation when you were little, because that ideology of just put your head down, get to work, and then the mindset of you can do whatever you want, that obviously had to come from somewhere. For me, I'll say that came from my parents. As a lot of Polynesians in our generation, those first generation parents who are immigrants, they kind of come from that background of, they're coming for an opportunity to go to school and then to work. And then, I mean, the ideology passed down to me was just like, just do it, like just keep your head down and just grind and hustle. And, the possibilities are endless as long as you can just work really, really hard. So talk to that.
Yeah, so I think similar to you as my parents. My parents came from Tonga, immigrated separately in the late 70s.
Okay.
And met here in Utah, got married. My parents were really young. I think my dad was 18, my mom was 16.
Oh, man.
And then just started having us kids, and we didn't have much, right? When I was a young kid, we lived in a home with my grandparents. There was, I think, 5 families total. We were the biggest family, and so we got the living room. Mm-hmm. And I'll just never forget sleeping on the floor, sleeping on the couch, wherever. When it was hot outside, we slept on my grandpa's mattress out with him. When it was cold, we just snuggled together to stay warm. And my dad and my mom, they always had 2 to 3 jobs they were juggling. And they were odd jobs, working in manufacturing. It wasn't until later that my dad got into construction, but I would just remember him leaving early in the mornings before we were awake and coming home late after we were already in bed. And then him and my mom would then go and clean office buildings. And I just can remember that childhood. It wasn't anything like traumatic for me. That was just life, right? Yep. So I lived life, but now looking back on it, I realize, how fortunate we are today coming from those humble beginnings. And all of my relationship with my dad was going to work. Later, he joined a drywall company. A family relative taught him the trade of drywall. And then after a couple of years, he started his own drywall company. And so growing up, us boys, we just went to work with him. And I think some of the life lessons that have shaped who I am in business and as a father and as a husband came from those conversations in the truck. And the story that I just remember and has been a driving force in my life is I can remember one particular day in Utah. It's just blazing hot and we are just doing hard labor. Yep. And my dad's sweating. It's hot. I'm like hot and just almost to the point where I'm like mad. Like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this? And the only thing keeping me from stopping is seeing my dad working so hard. Yeah. And almost to the point I'm frustrated. I'm almost like crying. And I'm just a little kid. And I remember getting back in the truck after work that day. And I'm like, mad at him, at everything, just life, and I'm like, Dad, like, why do you work so hard? Like, what are we doing? Like, what is this for? And he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, son, the reason why we work so hard is so that you can get an education and you can be better than us. And that has been my why for many, many years. And really that's why I've gone the education route. A lot of people, don't believe in education. They say, hey, I want to just be an entrepreneur. They start their own business and go that route. And I think that's fine. But that was instilled in me at a very young age that, hey, the reason why we came to America is for you. and you are supposed to get an education, and you're supposed to use that to be better than us. And really that shaped the way that I work, the way I've learned, the way that I've treated other people. Is just remembering those humble beginnings and remembering those days that we didn't have much, and my dad was just working hard to provide for us.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. That's an awesome story. That I kind of like where you said in there how it's just your dad said he wanted you to be better than him, and you said that's kind of where your purpose is, your why now. And so, I mean, this is just kind of, I guess you could say, a rhetorical question you can answer for yourself. But do you feel like, because you have kids now, and I loved how you did a little post with your daughter, and that if there is X amount of likes and comments, then she could be able to achieve a goal. But that's just like a small thing that, and then even her booth at the Raise the Tide event, it just kind of shows that, personally, do you feel like you're doing the right thing and you're on track to fulfilling that purpose of making sure that your kids are going to be better than you?
Yeah, that's the hope, right? And the lessons that I've learned going to school, getting degrees, going to graduate school, I'm trying to instill it and teach my kids at a young age, especially that entrepreneurial spirit, right? I run a construction company, and they're not going to pick up a hammer and go, do anything that way. And I have 3 girls are my oldest, and then my boy's the youngest. And so until my boy's old enough to work, I've got to figure out ways to incorporate them in the business. And so as you saw and you helped out with that video, I'm starting to use my kids in marketing and teaching them, look, we don't just get jobs. We don't just get money. It doesn't just happen. We've got to market. And so we're going to use you. We're going to use your cuteness. We're going to use your smarts and your ability, and have you come to work, learn what that's all about. And then we're going to put together a script. You're going to pitch it, and then we're going to incentivize you, right? The kids don't just want to just show up and work. And so I said, hey, for every 10 likes, I'll give you $1, right? Or whatever it was. I can't remember the amount, but we put that on the video, and it just was shared. Like, a lot of friends and family shared it because they're like, dude, let's make your dad broke by making sure we get enough likes and comments. And I was happy to pay it, right? Because it's a way that they're involved in our business. And I think my dream is when they're in high school that they are playing a pivotal role in my company. And maybe even to when they're in college and going to school, that they've almost completely taken it over. And so if I can instill those lessons and skills at a young age, man, I just am excited to see what happens with their creativity, with technology moving in the way it is, and then with kind of schooling and knowledge that comes with that. I'm excited to see what my kids become later, but I'm just trying to help facilitate that success so that they are better than me.
Yeah, I love it. So that's the long-term goal, is making sure that they have opportunities that, you never had at that age. You had a different set of opportunities that helped you get this opportunity, but you're providing that for them. That's the long-term goal. So what was the initial goal and your purpose when starting SOJO Construction initially?
Man, it was actually started out of luck and kind of not planned at all. If you would have told me, 5 years ago that I was going to start a construction company, I would tell you you're crazy. Because I had the experience of doing that hard labor. You heard the story of me and my dad. I hated it. I hated drywall. I hated construction. I'm like, I am going to school and I'm never doing this ever again. So that was my mentality. And I was in my graduate program. I got an MBA from Rice, and we were living in Houston. And a part of my degree, I did kind of the strategy route, and then I did entrepreneurship because I knew I've always wanted to start my own thing. And as a part of an entrepreneurship class, they said, you got to start a company. So we drew up business plans and we started writing out everything. And we got to the end of it, and my professor's like, why don't you start it? What's keeping you back? Is it money? Is it? And I'm like, no, it's not going to cost that much to actually start. I'm like, I just need to get licensed. I got to go to Utah. I got to take the classes. And really after a few days, I can get licensed and we can be off and running. And he was like, dude, do it. So I came back for spring break to get licensed and insured and get all the paperwork ready. and to really just kick it off and see what we could do. And so I did that all. I put in the initial investment, and then the pandemic happened.
Oh, yep.
And so school was kind of canceled, delayed. We weren't coming back. And I was like, man, this could be the worst time to start a business. That money I already put in, already a sunk cost. And I'm like, well, we'll just see what happens. Let's just keep on rolling. We don't know what this pandemic thing is. We don't know what coronavirus is. Whatever, we'll just keep on trying. And man, it was just a perfect storm. There couldn't have been a better time to start a construction company when people needed basements finished, because I needed a home office to work from home, or my kids are now all working or taking school from home. I need to put them in a basement so there's quiet places. Now there's no gyms to go to. I want a home gym so I can work out from home. And so we just, initially it went slow, and then everyone just kind of like, companies work from home. And people are like, I don't have places to work from. And so we just kind of hockey sticked and just got really busy really quick. I think the cool thing about this story too is we were able to help people who got laid off, right? They got laid off from their jobs because jobs didn't, some industries were shut down because of coronavirus and the pandemic. And so we were able to pick up some people to come work for SOJO Construction because of that. And so it just kind of worked out. And initially it was like a project that turned into a real company, then started making money. And it's like, oh shoot, I think we actually have a real company here. And, 3.5 years later, we're still here and just running projects and doing we started out as a basement finishing company. And now it's becoming, we're remodeling full homes now and doing flips, and a lot of now investors are using us to do all their projects. And so it's been kind of a cool story to come back and kind of reopen my dad's company and kind of use the skills that I've learned from both my upbringing and then also my education to create what SOJO Construction is today.
Yeah, gotcha. Man, that's awesome. I like how you just mentioned a little anecdote and reference back to your dad, to your pops, and I think that it always goes back to your roots and where you're from and what you learned. So let's talk about that. Going back to Tonga, was that? How many times have you been back home aside from?
We've probably been, 5 or 6 times.
Okay.
I went a couple times where I can't remember as a kid, but then at a young age, my parents started taking us back every few years just to see this is where we were raised. This is kind of how we grew up, and almost to force us to be like, hey, you should be grateful for what we have, right? Yeah. Because as you start growing up as a kid, you start seeing what other people have, and you're like, Mom, how come I don't have that? How come I don't have that? And they're like, we need to go back to Tonga. Yeah. And so we got a bunch of that, and it worked for us. Like we would take full suitcases, and then by the end, we're like giving out clothes and want to give all the candy out, because we realized, man, we have so much in America, and look at our cousins who don't have much. Let's give them everything we have. And so it's no different this time. But I think this time is different for me because I now have kids who are old enough to now recognize, right? They have the Xboxes and all the electronics and the cool toys or whatever at home. And they're fortunate, but they don't realize where our upbringing and where my parents moved from and how we grew up. And so it was awesome to go back and take them and to show them their cousins, and to see then that kind of that light turn on and that switch, the flip of the switch of, man, like, one of my daughters like, man, Dad, this is really sad. And I said it is, and that's why we come, that's why we give, that's why we shipped a container full of flour, sugar, rice, and brought things, clothes and stuff, because it's a way that we are giving back and helping support them that are still here in Tonga. And hopefully in time that we can get them to America so to have the same opportunities we have. Yeah. But it was just awesome to see that same light and switch turn on in my kids' minds, where they've been fully raised in America, and outside of maybe a movie where they've seen some third world country kids, now they got to see their family, right? And they could see the love we have for them, and they're like, man, I want to give back somehow. and just cool to see that.
Yeah, I love that. Good. Yeah, so we've talked about your company, your roots, where you're from, your why of why you do things. Let's talk about the present, where you're sitting now, and what your purpose is now. What you know, what's the what's why do you do what you do? What's the purpose?
Yeah.
What's the driving factor?
That's a good question. So one thing that we haven't talked about that is I'm kind of tugging back and forth, and it's a constant conversation between me and my wife is, aside from SOJO Construction, I actually still have a day job. I'm in tech sales. I work for Google. Here in Utah, my patch, I cover most of Utah, parts of different other neighboring states. But part of me going back to school was to get a good job, secure, benefits, and really just to work my way up the corporate ladder for years and years. And that's how we would make our living, right? We never knew SOJO Construction was going to kind of happen, and we've seen some success there. And now it's been kind of the tug between, do you go all in with SOJO Construction? Do you go all in with Google?
Yeah.
Do you continue to do this half and half? And that's kind of the big decision that we've been faced with today. But
Gotcha.
I think when you think of what are our values or guiding principles when we're making these decisions, first is my family. I'm always thinking about, how is this going to affect my wife, my kids?
Yeah.
My goal in life is really just to support them, to help my kids be better than me. Second would be my faith, right? Every big decision that we make, God is involved in that. Through prayer and fasting, we've kept him in the loop and everything. And man, we feel super fortunate and blessed because we feel that he's guided all of our major decisions that we've made. And then the third one, I think, is where we're at is a little bit of service.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've just gotten over the fact of, and this is not to say that we've made it in any way, but I've gotten over the need to feel like, man, I want to make as much money as possible. I want to just be rich and not have to worry about a dollar. I've gotten over that fact. And now my mindset and shift has been with my wife is, how do we give back? How do we make the most impact?
Yeah.
And so that's how Raise the Tide came about. It was me volunteering with all of these Polynesian organizations or underrepresented minority groups and saying, hey, how can we give back? And volunteer, donated, help run events. And, they're all great organizations. There's nothing bad to say about them. But I think the way my mind works is, hey, man, I wish that we could have done this. Hey, I wish we can do this. Man, our people could really use this workshop, or we could really use this opportunity. Or, hey, man, that speaker would be awesome if they could speak to our people. And instead of sitting back and saying, hey, can we change your organization to do this? Really, it just was like, let's just do it. Let's just see what will happen if we create this space that I've envisioned and see what happens. And it was started with one of my best friends, Hailame Kinikini. We went out to lunch, and we're just like, I think the great thing about Lame and some of my other friends that I've surrounded myself with is we're pushing each other to be better. Yeah. And, when we call each other out, it's out of love. And usually we can feel, man, yeah, you're right. I need to do this. And I did that with him with social media. Like, he was crushing the Airbnb space in short-term rental, and nobody would have known. Yeah. Nobody had any idea. And I was like, bro, you're being selfish. You need to share your story, and you need to share it with other people, and it's going to completely change your career. And it has. And I take a little bit of credit for it. And he recognizes that conversation, but really he just crushed it himself. He did it all. But it's just that type of relationship to challenge each other. And like, I think he said something during that conversation, like, why don't we just do it? Let's do it, bro. Like, let's send out an invite and just see how many people show up. We'll have a barbecue at our house. Blew up. And then you were at the first event, over 100 people there, and it's just slowly progressed, and it's grown into something that has been pretty special and created a space where people are collaborating, working together. People are doing deals together, and we're all really up leveling, and that's the exciting thing. So that's part of what I think is the now and the present. I don't know when this is going to be released, but I'm actually announcing probably later this year. After a lot of prayer, I told you faith has been a big part, and we've changed the mindset of how do we give back and have the most impact. I'm actually running for the state legislature here in Utah.
Oh, wow.
So you've heard it here first, here on this podcast. But we'll be doing a formal announcement here at the end of the year.
That's awesome, Doug.
And man,
it's gonna be awesome to have one of our own up on the state level to be able to advocate and represent for us. That's huge. Exactly. Man, I forget his name. He was at the last event. Governor.
Oh, so Governor Cox was 2 ago, and then Burgess Owens, Congressman Burgess Owens was at the last event.
Yeah, how he talked about, kind of not battles or wars, but a lot of representation is one at the state level where you can have someone who can be there to advocate for us, and that's gonna be huge, man. Dude, that's awesome.
Man, I'm excited. It's I've always been involved in kind of the political world.
Yeah. I mean, even at USU, you're on the board, or so you're involved there.
Yeah, I was a student body president. I served 2 terms there, and as a part of that, you're lobbying for the school's interest, right? You want dollars for buildings, you want tuition to stay low, you want all these things that you're lobbying, and you get the opportunity to meet with legislators, the governor, and such, and so. I had that opportunity. I also sat as the president of the Utah Student Association. So all the student body presidents in Utah sit on this board, and you work with the state legislature, the governor's office, the commissioner of higher education, and basically advocate for all 300,000 students in Utah. And so I've had little tastes here and there. I've been a state delegate and have been to state conventions and voted for things, and I think it's just now to a point where I've realized I can give back in a more meaningful way. Yeah. And feel like I have the experience, the knowledge, the background to advocate not only for our people and not only for my district, but for all of the state of Utah, and making sure that we're making the right choices, because Utah is in this kind of growth era. So many people are moving in, and there's housing and water issues and so many things happening within the state of Utah that the decisions that we make today are going to affect yours and I's kids, right? It's going to affect our kids and our grandkids. And so I don't think that there's a better time to step in the arena than now, because these decisions are critical. And they need to be made with a lot of people, a lot of smart people in the room. And I'm not saying I'm that smart person, but I think one of my superpowers is getting people together, listening to their viewpoints, and then advocating. And so that's really the big decision of why I decided to run, and why we'll be announcing later this year.
That's awesome. Well, that's good to hear. I'm pretty confident in your abilities, because just like you said, you are good at rallying the people together and being able to give everyone a voice. And that said, for people who may not feel they have a voice, or they may be struggling to find a sense of purpose, or they've lost purpose along their way, what would you recommend is the best way to kind of get back on track, or just anyone who's struggling in that phase of what's next? What advice could you give to that?
Man, I think the things that I went back to, right, were my kind of guiding principles, my values. I think taking some time to sit down and really prioritize what's most important to you, right? Is it your family? Is it your faith? Is it giving back? Is it money? Is it your career? Is it recognition? It could be anything, and it really doesn't matter what it is, but I think being very specific on those guiding principles and values then dictate the rest of what should happen, right? Sometimes we make decisions because there's a flashy job, or because I want to make a lot of money, or because my wife wants it, or because I want to be comfortable, or maybe because I'm uncomfortable, right? I don't want to make the jump to be an entrepreneur because I'm uncomfortable. If you have these guiding principles and you go back to them, then it's hard to go back against it, right?
Sure.
Is my family in alignment? Is my faith in alignment? Is the service and impact and giving back in alignment? Is financially, does it make sense, right? And so I think getting very specific on those values and those guiding principles, and then saying, okay, let's go back to that. Does it fall within these? And if the answer is yes, then you're moving in the right direction. If it's no, then you've got to be disciplined enough to say, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I shouldn't take that job.
Yeah, 100%. Some non-negotiables, I guess you could say.
For sure.
Nice.
For sure.
I love it. Well, that's some good advice that I know our viewers would love to hear. And anything that we missed as far as, is there any piece of the story that, I failed to be able to ask a question to prompt? Because again, the idea of this podcast is to be able to help people understand that regardless of how much you've accomplished, or the people that we bring on the show have accomplished, which you have a lot, especially in just the last 5 years. Is there anything else as far as just, just the root of who you are and your purpose, and just anything at all?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think I would be very ungrateful not to mention that everything that I've accomplished, and not that it's anything great or amazing, but anything that I've accomplished, it's because of the people around me. There's family and friends that have been my support team through every major shift and decision that have helped me to become who I am today.
Yeah.
And key to that is my wife, right? I think so many times we like to take credit and like, man, look at me, I'm accomplishing so much. The reality is, man, without my wife supporting me, being there to hold down the fort in the home, I would be nothing. And my wife, Jocelyn, is just amazing. For the people who know her, like, she is the kindest person you know. She's super supportive. She's patient. She's the best mom, and just an amazing wife. And nothing that I have done could have been accomplished without her. Like, even one of the hardest things I've done was getting an MBA. My cousin Kim Melao, he put his wife's name on his on his degree, and I honestly, that was the coolest thing. I was like, dude, I'm gonna do it too, because really, dude, I wasn't home for 2 years.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? No sleep, nothing, and I would be home, pick up dinner, leave, pick up snacks and stuff, leave. She would drop off books. I forgot my laptop, and just it's been a team effort through the struggles and through the triumphs. We've been just a team where we've worked so close together that everything that I've accomplished is because of her. And I'm just lucky to have just a partner that is just as driven and supportive
equally
as anyone.
Invested.
Absolutely.
I love that. I can appreciate that, because my wife she's the same way. Nothing is possible. Behind every good man is a better woman.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
But it's not a Batman and Robin. It's a Batman and Superman. Like, we're just two just along side by side. And although our roles are different, she crushes it in her roles and makes me better every day. And that's how I knew I was going to marry her. Was as soon as I'd met her, she made me want to be a better person, be a better husband, better father, be better at everything. And 10, 11 years later, it's still that. I still am striving to be the husband and father that she deserves and my kids deserve.
It's awesome, Doug. Well, I appreciate that. And I can appreciate that last piece of advice, because I agree wholeheartedly, man. I can't do anything without my wife. She's definitely a driving factor of what I do today and why I even do it in the first place. So, is there anything else at all?
No, man, just appreciate it. I think if you're looking for any work done construction-wise, you can find us on social media, SOJO Construction. SOJOconstruction.com is our website. Would love to work with anyone looking in the investing route. We've helped a ton of investors And then if you're looking to flip and you don't know how to do it, I've flipped homes personally of my own with my own money, but also have helped other investors flip their homes. And so I think sometimes when you're getting in the investing game, which that's the sexy hot thing to do now, is you don't know what to do. You have the money, you maybe can find a deal and the numbers look right, and then it's like, okay, who's going to do the work, right? And we found this kind of niche now that we can do it. We can do it at costs. We can do it as on schedule, and we can work really closely to make sure that you hit your numbers, we win, you win, and we win together.
There it is. And we'll drop all of the links below to SOJO Construction, to Doug's other pages as well, like Raise the Tide, if you want to be a part of that as well. And we'll make sure everyone has access to every great thing that you're doing today. So we appreciate you, Doug. Thanks for coming on today. And we'll see you guys on the next one. And we're excited to release this episode for you all. Thank you, Doug, again.
Yeah, thank you.